Welcome to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. Each week we talk about heart rate variability and how it can be used to improve your overall health and wellness. Please consider the information in this podcast for your informational use and not medical advice. Please see your medical provider to apply any of the strategies outlined in this episode. Heart Rate Variability Podcast is a production of Optimal LLC and Optimal HRV. Check us out at optimalhrv.com. Please enjoy the show. Welcome, friends, to Heart Rate Variability Podcast. I am back here with star guest, good friend of the show, good friend of mine, Dr. Ina Khazan, to talk about some improvements to the Optimal HRV app around biofeedback. But even if you're not using the Optimal app, stay tuned because I got my perception of some things challenged by our current. I've got questions around my own practice, and I think regarding on what you're using for HRV biofeedback, this will be, as it always is with Ina, a great discussion. So Ina, welcome back to the show. So always good to have you. I know you're getting a lot of snow there in Boston, so glad you are somewhat warm on this cold day.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Awesome. So we've got a couple new features out with our HRV biofeedback and mindfulness. The one I want to, there's a couple things kind of to talk about today, because one of the requests that you had was to do the biofeedback without the heart rate monitor, which I could understand that. Honestly, sometimes I think that's just distracting. But to continue to give low frequency optimal zone data, but to take the breathing pacer away as an option. It's still automatically on. And I kind of felt like you were taking away HRV biofeedback, like resonance frequency breathing at, for me, 4.5 breaths per minute, getting my good inhale, exhale, getting my pause number just right. And I took it away. And I'll be a little honest, I'm like, I got to talk to Ina about this because I'm not sure what to do, but I'm finding it fascinating. So let me start out just by asking, why did you have that request in the most recent version release we've had to have the option of taking away the breathing pacer? I just love to let you dive into your thinking around this.
Sure. Well, a couple of reasons. One, just more of a, I guess, theoretical one. If we think about what actual biofeedback is, we're supposed to be guiding what we do based on our physiological signals, not an outside pacer. So technically speaking, true biofeedback is without the pacer, where we're being guided by the physiological readings from our nervous system, meaning either the heart rate tracing or the optimal zone, which is the low frequency power. So what you're being guided by what the body is actually doing, and then adjusting our breathing based on those, based on that data. So that is true biofeedback. When you have the pacer to guide you, it's a biofeedback with a crutch. Nothing wrong with it. It's great. It's amazing to have it.
Yeah.
But if we go with strictly what biofeedback is, we need to be able to do without the outside guidance. But in more practical terms, right? I'm really not that much of a stickler for technicalities and theories. In more practical terms, what I want people to be able to do is get into their breathing when they don't have access to their phone. Yeah. Because obviously that's going to happen. You are in a meeting and you find yourself, getting a little overactivated, maybe finding hard to focus, maybe feeling a little agitated, overwhelmed, etc. What do? HRV breathing, resonance frequency breathing is extremely helpful as a response to that situation. But if you have never done your breathing without that pacer, what are you like? How are you going to get in there, especially under stressful situations, right? If all your practice is with a pacer when things are safe and comfortable, and then suddenly you're finding yourself when it's not as comfortable and you don't maybe feel completely safe, maybe not from a physical standpoint, but emotionally. So it's a challenge, and figuring out how to do your breathing, A, without the pacer, and B, when you are stressed, is difficult. So I want people to be able to practice that, specifically for the situations when they don't have access to their phone.
I love that. So let's say we have the options on of, the optimal zone. And for those not using the app, really a metric of low frequency and the percentage of time you're spending in that ideal HRV training rate during biofeedback. And you've got the heart rate monitor going where you get those up and nice curves. Does Okay, I find it, I'll just full disclosure, more difficult to stay in what we call optimal zone without the pacer. I would
Right.
say it would be like two crutches, maybe even like and I think like I could just kick back with the pacer and kind of relax and maybe even
Mhm.
throw it on vibrate. So it's going on. You gave me permission. I've run with it to watch television while I do my biofeedback if I do some focus training outside of that. So I'm doing all this and I find like I'm paying a lot more attention to the heart rate, but I don't know, should I like, is there anything there that should help guide my breathing at all with that? Because I find that like I'm kind of using that as a pacer a little bit, but I don't know if I'm doing that right either.
Yeah. So excellent question. I wouldn't expect people to just be able to turn off the pacer and do as well as they do
Mhm.
without the pacer, right?
I'm
Obviously,
proof of that. Yeah.
right. So am I. It just doesn't work that way.
Yes.
Um, so I do have some suggestions for how to improve your optimal zone and or low frequency power without the pacer. So basically, how do you use the pacer in the transition to not needing the pacer?
Yeah.
Um, when you feel so first of all, let me preface what I'm about to say is with it is absolutely fine to spend, quite a bit of your practice, in that, kick back, relax, do your HRV breathing. It's nice and comfortable, and you're relaxing on the couch, and you use the pacer visually, but with the vibration, with sound, doesn't matter. Great, you should do that because it is the best way to be precise in your breathing is to use the pacer, of course,
Mhm.
right? But then, when that feels comfortable, and you would like to find a way to not be dependent on the pacer, right? Use it sometimes, but not have to use it all the time.
Right.
So this is where you put away the TV and all the
Yeah.
distractions and all that, right? And really give yourself some mindful time. Use the pacer, but what you're doing at that moment is really paying attention to how are you feeling, what are you noticing
Mhm.
as you're using the pacer. And there's a number of things you can pay attention to. You can pay attention to the heart rate display.
Mhm.
Right, with the apps including optimal, we have to be careful because there is a bit of a delay, right? There
Yeah.
is a little bit of a lag with most apps. So that feedback is not as immediate as it might be, which is at some point the technology will catch up, right? We'll
Yeah.
we'll get there. So that might be why it's hard to follow your heart rate as a pacer because
Yeah.
it's actually like a tiny bit off. So with apps, I would say maybe don't.
Okay.
You can still see that display and watch it and kind of watch the nice waves. It's still good feedback, but it's not going to be as good as a pacer. We could learn to follow our heart rate as a pacer. You can actually do that,
Mhm.
uh, but not when there is a delay. So my suggestion is just start with seeing what you notice internally. What does your heart rate feel like? What does your body feel like? What does your breath feel like? Just really start noticing, as opposed to going up, down, in, out that we do with a pacer. Pay attention to the internal sensations. And then figure out, what's going to be an internal cue that is available to you at all times where you don't have to be dependent on the phone pacer. The easiest thing is to count.
Yeah.
Right. So what you can just do is use a count that's going to fall. That's going to be similar to your resonance frequency breathing rate, and then adjust it to the pacer while using the pacer. So the simplest example is if you're breathing at 6 breaths per minute, that's 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. And you can count 4 in, 6 out, and time it to approximately, a second for each count, also accounting for the little pauses. And just do that, and you can use your counting together with the pacer, and then maybe turn the pacer off, or put the phone away. Use your pacer as a cue. See how you do. Sorry, do you use your internal pacer as a cue? Use accounting, and then see how you do, and use that as feedback. You can continue watching the screen without the pacer, right? You'll get the heart rate display, you'll get the low frequency or the optimal zone, that true physiological feedback. It will tell you how well are you doing. And then, you can bring the actual pacer back and try again, to readjust and fine tune, because of course, initially you'll go a little too fast or a little too slow. But using the physiological feedback, you learn how to adjust that internal cue. So counting, it's still a pacer. It's just internal. So I guess technically it's still a little bit of a crutch, but it's always available. So I see no problem with just using that. Great, right? Some people don't like counting. They prefer having phrases that will
mantras,
kind of pace. Yeah, little mantras, phrases. Those can be often very interesting and creative. I once worked with somebody who used the phrase Encyclopedia Britannica, and Encyclopedia for the breath in, Britannica for the breath out. And she sing-songed that in just the right way to work. It sounds like encyclopedia is too long a word, and Britannica is too short for the exhalation, right? But she sing-songed it exactly like, and it was super helpful. So people come up with really interesting ways to pace themselves. Be creative. You'll need to play around, make sure it works with the pace of your breathing. But the only words I would say stay away from are things like breathe, relax, come down, things that actually end up putting pressure on you.
I always like to throw a meta statement in, if you can work some positive affirmation or something. I had nothing wrong with Encyclopedia Britannica, but it just seems like a nice space to, offer loving kindness to the world.
Absolutely.
I think we need a little bit of that right now.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So we so do. Yes. May I be safe and free from harm. You can sing song it in just the right way, right? Yeah, absolutely. May I have peace and comfort. May you have peace and comfort. All of that is wonderful. You can also do simpler, like just words like blue ocean, do something like that. So figure out what works for you. And the idea is just to use that phrase, mantra, meta, counting, use it together with the pacer on the screen, then put the screen away, get feedback from the app that's telling you how well you're doing, adjust a little bit, use the pacer again, put it away again, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you feel like you've got it, you use some of your practice time to continue maintaining your ability to breathe at your resonance frequency without the pacer. But it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be the whole practice. You can maybe start out start your biofeedback session with like first 3 or 4 minutes without the pacer, and then you bring the pacer back if you want. Or the other way around, you start with a pacer, and then once you feel like, okay, I'm in the zone, I've got it, I'm going to turn the pacer off and continue on my own without it. Or you can do one session without the pacer and the next session with the pacer. Lots of ways to do this. You just want to spend some of the time without the pacer just to maintain that skill, right? So that when you find yourself needing it and not being able to use the phone, you have it.
So I'm curious because on one hand, of course, we had a new feature, so I just obsessively started to experiment with it. And I sort of got into it without necessarily the goal, just because we have a new feature, so I got to play around with it, of sort of thinking that the goal was I'm going to do resonance frequency breathing. So again, 4.5 breaths per minute for me without a visual stimulus that I'm going to count it. So I went into it. I'm going to stay in optimal zone as long as I can somehow, and it was, me well enough to know, yeah, that's kind of what Matt would probably do without having
Yep.
this conversation with you. So one, I guess, one question I have is, let me just start there, then I'll ask my follow up. Is the ultimate goal really of turning the breathing pacer off, really just to replicate the breathing as a tool that you can use without having looking at your phone? Like is that really the goal of being able to turn the pacer off, in your thinking?
Well, I mean, yes. What you're doing is you're increasing internal awareness,
Yeah, okay.
right? Which goes a very long way for lots of things, right? So even just you can do this just for the purpose of increasing internal awareness, which many of us can use, right? That increased self-awareness is always a good thing. And then it will also give you the ability to use your breathing when the pacer is not available. It's
Mhm.
both.
Yeah, so the I guess secondary pieces, because I missed the primary goal of just jumping right in when I jumped right into it. I, it's interesting trying to stay low frequency dominant just on your own. I felt like I was kind of wondering out. And again, my morning, just so you know, I do 16 minutes, but I kind of got everything timed out with my meta and my prayer and my so like if I turn the pacer off, God knows what's going to happen to that practice. So I kind of look at that as my structured practice. And then my evening, where I do get 40 minutes a day, and so I'll brag a little bit about that. Evening is just I'm relaxed. I'm kind of free forming it. So in the evening, what I really found, like I can turn. I did this last night. Just turn my pacer on vibrate. Look down at my phone every once in a while. I think I got like an 89% over 25 minutes in optimal zone. Brag. While watching astronomical documentaries on YouTube. So but I could kind of look away from it, and I knew I was there. As I kind of tried, as I turned the pacer off, I almost can't watch my nerdy documentaries while doing the
Right.
practice. I almost have to, like, it is almost a workout. Like
Mhm.
I've shared with our audience like the lion's breath, and I do muscle contractions on the inhale. Like I call them my Schaefer toe extensions, where Fred taught me you bring the toes back, and I'm doing pelvic floor contractions, and my wife's looking at me, and I've got like facial expressions going on. Like it is fascinating. Like, and you mentioned this, like the level of focus in, I would call it introspection, that I'm trying to use my whole mind, my whole body to hang on to that optimal zone, and seeing it slip from high 80s to, in the 60s, which still isn't terrible, but I might be doing something good there. Like that's the whole thing of trying to figure out is like, am I just like going to give myself a hernia because I'm trying to stay in optimal zone, or pass out because I'm like, and like I can find like really strong, long exhales can get me back up there, but like it's opened up this whole new realm of experiment for folks. And I don't know if you would ever suggested or if there's like go freestyle on it for some reason whatsoever. But I just love to get a little feedback on the Matt version of what I'm trying to do with this new function.
I totally commend the experimentation. I love it. You're learning so much about yourself and about biofeedback and resonance frequency breathing and optimal zone, right? I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
Um, I think we just have to temper your expectations with the amount of effort that you're putting into it. You are not going to be in optimal zone as much. The optimal zone is all about allowing your breath to happen, right, and allowing your nervous system to kind of rest in that optimal state, where the vagus and the baroreflex are working together in that ideal way, and effort is going to kick you out of that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's awesome. You learn a lot, right? There's
yeah.
absolutely a place for it. And I would say that, it's actually great to experiment in this way of, put some effort into it, see what happens, and see if you can let go of the effort and get back into the optimal zone, but without the effort, without the trying, right? That's the paradox, that mindfulness paradox is, we can, the more we try to get into the optimal zone, the more we fail and the more we get kicked out. We have to allow ourselves to get there. So that in itself is huge practice, because in real life it's so often that we have to put effort into something, and then we know we only have a little bit of time to recover before something else, so we have to learn how to let go of that effort, and get into our optimal zone for recovery before moving on to something else. So it is an incredibly useful practice. I love that you're doing it. I just don't think you can both put effort into it and like give yourself a hernia, which I hope you don't, but and stay in the optimal zone.
And it's a really fascinating thing because I find, and again, this is a lot of the N of one or the Matt experience of this is that whereas again, if I just have the vibrations going on for the inhale or exhale, I can sort of relax and kind of dual focus on. I learned about exoplanets last night. I mean, this is what I'm doing during my evening practice. So I'm nerding out about why Pluto's in a planet and these other exoplanets. But I'm inhaling and exhaling resonance frequency, and again, I get 90% on there. Maybe if I focus for 25 minutes, I'd probably get so bored and I'd drive myself crazy. So then the distraction probably helps. The interesting thing with the optimal zone without the pacer is like I've got to, but I feel like I do have to work in some ways, and I totally appreciate what you're saying, and want to just say you're right. And it's like if I'm starting to think too much about this planet we found that's in the shape of like a green bean out there, which I obsessed about, like all of a sudden like I'm way out. I'm in like drop to low degrees, like 20% low frequency. And maybe my natural breath isn't going off, but if I'm not kind of focused on the screen and I keep it there by slight adjustments, and a hernia is an exaggeration, but I am doing a lot to keep there that it swings out dramatically fairly quickly. And I just find that fascinating. Whereas like breathing with the pacer, I might dip into medium sometimes, but then I'm like, okay, kick back in, get better aligned. So it's been a fascinating experience with my wife. Just I'm annoying the hell out of her but usually she's in bed by the time I do my exoplanet nerding out on it. But I just find it's a fascinating thing. Maybe not do it for 25 minutes, but play around with it because it's a whole different experience of biofeedback in my opinion.
Absolutely. So you bring up a really, really important point, especially when you're first learning how to breathe without the pacer. It is going to take a bit of effort, and
Yeah.
you're not going to be in the optimal zone right away, right? Um, remember how I first convinced you not to watch TV while doing your breathing? Because
Yep.
if I remember correctly, you saw that your optimal zone and your low frequency, your results were better if you were kind of mindfully paying attention.
Yep.
And then, because you've been doing so much practice, you can now watch your exoplanets and
Yep.
stay in the optimal zone because you learn how to manage your attention.
Yep.
So, yay, right? That's an amazing skill. And it took you a little while to get there.
Yeah.
And you will be able to do the breathing without the pacer while watching, green bean planets
Yeah.
soon enough. It's just going to take a little bit of time. And initially, I would say just give yourself some mindful time to pay
Yeah.
attention. Get that awareness going. Because your mind can't actually multitask, right? Our
Right.
brains are not
Yeah.
capable of that. They're switching.
Yes.
And when one of the tasks is not very familiar, it's just really easy to get off track and
Oh,
get
that's yeah.
overactivated and get out of zone, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So once you feel like you're staying in the optimal zone, like I would say 85% or high, or
Mhm.
yeah, 85% of the time, or more, like in your 10-minute practice, without the pacer, then you can absolutely start adding, watching a documentary. Again, I wouldn't do this all the time, but
Right.
for the sake of training your brain and training that attention, then start adding the documentaries, and you'll notice that it's going to be easier. At first, it's still going to be your optimal zone will drop, but with a bit of time, it's going to climb back up. Without intending to brag, I can do my breathing under all sorts of circumstances and end up fairly with fairly high optimal zone scores, but it took me a long time to be able to do that. Right, it's not something that
Yeah.
you could do right away, and most people cannot do this right away. Right, it's just a matter of practice. So you have a new challenge for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's this brings up, another, I think, key point. I think, as you and I both know, getting people to practice is difficult. We're always trying to get people to get up to that 20 minutes a day sort of level. I'm curious, and again, just for the listeners out there, I do 16 minutes of highly focused practice every morning, right? Where I don't have any distractions. I'm just kicking butt in optimal zone. So this is I was doing 10 minutes of focus practice in the evening. And then I realized, and this is kind of my final question to you here, is that okay, 10 minutes of focus practice, I'm assuming that the focus of that practice has some benefit as well. I'm doing my meta statements, prayers, other things, spiritual connections, this, that, and the other, because I got to be doing something. Otherwise, I'll just be thinking about things that aren't very mindful. If I am spending, let's say, while I watch my nerdy documentaries, if I'm getting 20 minutes in optimal zone, dual focused. So I'm not practicing mindfulness by any stretch of the imagination, but I get 20 minutes in optimal zone versus 10 minutes of focus practice in optimal zone. Am I are those kind of equal? Would you say like, hey, 20 minutes is better than 10 minutes? I just would like to say, let's say I'm a patient, a client of yours, like, hey, I'm in optimal zone for 20 minutes, even though I'm watching Netflix shows or something like that. I'm just curious what you would tell somebody like a Yahoo like me who is trying to both watch nerdy documentaries and practice biofeedback at the same time.
Hey, that's what it's going to take for you to do 20-minute practice. Totally go for it. I think there is, I don't know if you can say that one's better than the other. Most importantly is what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate question.
Yes.
If you're going to do 20 minutes while watching documentaries and you stay in the optimal zone, for a great majority of that 20 minutes, your nervous system is getting that good workout. So I'm
Yeah.
happy with that. Is there also a benefit to doing a 10-minute more mindful practice where you're staying in the optimal zone and your mind is truly present? you are getting you are going to get something extra from that.
Mhm.
Um, the I would also say, for the sake of our listeners who are going to go, okay, 20 minutes while watching documentaries. For most people, that's going to take a lot of practice to be able to get there, right?
Yes.
Matt, I know you've been, this has been
Yeah.
something you've been working on for a long time. And it's going to take a while. You're watching the documentary, but you're really like, in order for you to be in the optimal zone, it's not just the mechanics of breathing. Yes, the rate
Right.
of breathing matters a whole lot. Uh,
Yes.
but the way your mind is activated has to be in that optimal zone as well. So you
Yeah.
figured out how to do that while watching those documentaries. I imagine if you put on the news, you may not be in an
That
optimal
actually is
zone.
that'd be a good thing to test out. I
You
might.
can, yeah, let me know what happens, right? Give it a try. So it is a slightly different state, right? And I just don't want to give the impression that it's just the mechanics of breathing, because it's not. As many people notice, they're paying attention to the breathing. The breathing is just the right rate. The mind wanders off. And like, wait
Yes.
a second, what happened to my optimal zone, right?
Right.
So while the breathing matters, it's absolutely necessary. It's not. It's also not sufficient. Um, so ultimately, whatever is going to get you to do the practice is what's most important. But I just don't want people to feel like, okay, right off the bat, I can do my 20 minutes while watching, TV or like, action movies or something,
Yeah.
and stay in the optimal zone.
Yeah, and just as a note, I'm assuming you would agree with me. If you don't, please. Is one of the things I really believe we're seeing with our users, and we try to onboard people with this in mind, is pace breathing, especially pace breathing that gets you into low frequency HRV, is somewhat of a skill set. So,
Yep.
people that jump right in and take their resonance frequency breathing day one, the first thing they do in the app, and they've never done pace breathing, that I get a lot of people reaching out to me and said, is this set forever? And according to research, it's kind of set forever once you reach adulthood. Though I think we're questioning that a little bit. But like, I'm really encouraging, if you're not doing a lot of pace breathing before you start this, retake it, 5 weeks, 6 weeks out. And people often see that their breaths per minute might, measure up to 2 breaths per minute. I was talking to somebody today, but usually it's more like a half a breath or 1 breath per minute with that. And I just think that, hey, if you're new to pace breathing, yeah, do your focus practice, but it doesn't take a whole lot to turn the vibration on and just practice pace breathing, maybe even not track an optimal zone. To get some experience with this, and then you're building a skill set that will serve you well. Whether or not you nerd out and try to get to that magical 41 minutes that I have found a way to cheat and get to, or not, but that skill that you're building, in addition to even 5 minutes of a focus practice, I think can help get people to some of the outcomes that we see with HRV biofeedback.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you.
Awesome. Well, Ina, thank you so much. I really tried not to make this about a personal consultation with me, but I've had some users reach out and get really excited about this feature. And so I just was really excited to have this conversation with you. And again, you can try out the Optimal HRV app for free. We've got a trial out there if you want to play around just with some of the things that we're talking about. Feel free to check that out, as well as show notes and other podcast episodes at optimalhrv.com. And as always, we'll see you soon. Thanks so much, Ina.
Thank you, Matt.